Hey, everybody, welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. This podcast series is about getting to the books that have impacted my network, their lives, their business, their work, whatever it may be, whether it's their work or their leadership, just books that have kind of driven home a message that they carry with them. So I'll be interviewing these great leads on these books. And the way that I've done it in this series is three categories of books. The first one they're schooling me on, one that they haven't written, but they're sharing with me. A second one that we've both read together, whether specifically for this episode or in our past lives. And then the third one is where I interview authors and or publishers about a book that's out there that they want to get the message out for. So in this particular episode, I'll be talking to the author of the book, and the guest in this episode is Maureen Ross Gemme. Maureen is the CEO of Emerge Leadership Academy. Maureen began training leaders across New England in 2015 after a 30-year corporate career. She loves riding motorcycles and is a leadership and life coach. She trains and coaches professionals who want to make an impact. As a personality expert, Maureen helps her clients own their own gifts and embrace the differences in the diversity of others to build better relationships. After living through her teenage years as a drug addict and alcoholic, Maureen stepped into recovery and created an awesome life. She has a deep compassion for helping others to emerge, evolve, and lead their best lives. She's the author of Emerge 7 Steps to Transformation, No Matter What Life Throws at You. And she turned her book into an online program called Recovery at Work. Now, I met Maureen through the University of Hartford's Entrepreneurial and Women's Business Center. She and I both presented there at different times in leadership workshops. So, kind of running those same circles. And her work stems from such a deep personal experience and mission. You can see it in the work and the presentations, how she speaks about her experience and what she wants for other people. Obviously, that's the kind of person that I want to share this kind of conversation with. So, Maureen, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here, John. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So I gave a short bio there, but why don't you give us a sense of who you are today? Can you give us a little bit about the work that you're doing with your clients?
Yeah, I do. I'm one of those. I like to have a lot of different things to do. I have a personality type that routine is not my way. So currently, right now, I'm training leadership classes, mostly in the everything disc genre, which is a personality type indicator for helping people to really understand who they are at work, how they're building their relationships, and why people might really bug them. And
Mm,
so, right, when we know that about our colleagues, it's easier to bear, and also we know when to pull them in because we know what their strengths are. The second thing I love to do is coach individuals. So the first one is sort of training and coaching leaders and groups. And then I also work with individuals who really want to step up into the next level of who they are in at work or in their life. So everything I help them with is written in my book. That was why I wrote the book to begin with. It's like that personal growth channel because of my background. And I just think that all leadership starts with personal growth, and then we develop ourselves and we develop others. And the third thing I do is I run a podcast. It's called Emerge, Evolve, Lead, and it's for people in recovery from addiction. And I'm on episode, like, I don't know, in the high 80s now, and
congrats.
I just love meeting people from all over the world and hearing their stories and sharing their inspiration, their hope, and how they stepped into leadership. And the final thing I do is I speak. So I speak at conferences, I speak for podcasts and people like you, because I really believe that this message is super important. We all are leaders, whether we have people reporting directly to us or not. And we are examples for our kids, for people in the community, for our friends, for our families, for our colleagues, and everywhere. And it all starts with that inner leadership. So I'm helping people to overcome that inner voice and really figure out how to live life to the fullest, because as we all know with the pandemic, life is just too short. Over, they say, the new estimates, the more clearer picture is, over 20 million people have passed because of this pandemic, in one way or another.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, what I love the most about what you share is obviously I wasn't in this field before, the last decade, but I can imagine what it was, well, what leadership might have been in the past, where it just seemed like when you got to work, you were a leader. When you left, you weren't. You were your home person, your personal life. But I love how in working with clients, there is no whatever they learn about and for their leadership, whatever they take on, whatever they evolve into, those are lessons that they can take into other areas of their life. Yes, those other areas may not be leadership. It may not be about mission and values and projects and initiatives and um, um, superiors or subordinates or whatever you want to call it. But there's a lot of lessons that it's just self leadership. It's like that self awareness. So I love the fact that you point out that it's important to build up your personal, learn there first, and then bring that out into your environment.
Well, even when you're in a subordinate and you have a manager above you, we need to learn to manage them too, right? So
Absolutely.
so managing relationships, right? It really does come across everywhere. But a lot of people do say that when they're taking the assessment, they say, "Well, should I take this for how I am at home or how I am at work?" And I say, "Well, just take it how you are at work because that those values and beliefs that you have about yourself will come through
Hmm.
in that assessment. I've actually tried to answer the questions to be more of a different type than I am, and it was like if I could not, I couldn't do it, and
It
so
called you on your bullshit.
oh, it's amazing. And so it really does sort of force you to, well, if you're honest with yourself. There's a lot
Yeah.
of people though out there, John, that aren't honest with themselves, but most of them are not attracted to what I teach.
What's interesting too is how much when I started leadership coaching and just realizing that connection between leadership, formal leadership, a position, a title, a plaque, whatever it may be, and your life, it's amazing how often people are willing to change. They just don't know that there was an option. You know what I mean? They're going through the life on cruise
Oh,
control,
mhm.
like they're just coasting without stopping and thinking about their thinking, without stopping and looking at what they're doing. They're just kind of, they got the blinders on and they were just taught that if they push full steam ahead, they'll be successful without
Yeah.
every once in a while reassessing what they're doing to make sure they're doing it as efficiently as possible. So it's amazing how as soon as you ask somebody to acknowledge where they stand, they're like, "Oh, I didn't even think about stepping outside of myself to realize what this looks like. I'm just trying to survive," is what they maybe is how they may have been programmed.
Oh yeah, and actually, it's very difficult to really understand what kind of choices you have until you become consciously awake or awakened or enlightened or whatever you want to call it. Once you realize you have choices, then you can start living by design instead of
That's
by
it.
default.
That's it. Exactly. They're not aware of the options.
Right.
That's
Yep.
what kills me is it's just a matter of waking them up to their options. So, Maureen, for you, for your work to understand how you ended up here, can you give me a sense of where it started off? Your path, whether it was education, family. We don't have to go year by year, but what did the general path look for you from when you started really developing yourself, who you were coming into your own to now?
Sure. So it's funny because, I one of the papers that I wrote in my thesis for my master's program in education was, are leaders born or are they developed? Nurture versus nature and all that.
Hmm.
I was not a born leader, I say in that way. In fact, I was raised in a family with 6 kids, where my mom had 6 kids in 8.5 years, and I was number
Wow.
3, and that's called Irish Catholic, in case you didn't
Yeah. Well, I didn't want
know.
to say that, but okay, yeah.
Oh,
That's a
clearly.
that's a great example of it for sure.
And so I was one of the pack. I was told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, why. Rarely, sometimes I was told why to do it. But honestly, I really didn't have a lot of choices. I had some choices growing up for sure. Like, did I want to go to Girl Scouts or, volleyball or something? But for the most part, I was one of the pack. And so when I got into my teenage years, we all know that that is part of your job, is to break away from your parents and figure out who you really are. We develop our sort of our physical body, if you will. We decide, you know, what type we are. Are we going to be straight or gay, or are we going to, not that we decide, but these things
Yeah.
come out, right? And we
Yeah.
develop our sexuality into our all of that stuff.
Hmm.
And part of that is not staying young and growing up and trying new things. So for me, being one of the pack at the time I grew up was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's
Hmm.
the time that I grew up in. So to be one of them, I wanted to be accepted. I did all kinds of drugs and alcohol before, even, starting at the age of 13 and 14. And by the time I was 15, I was pretty much a full blown alcoholic. In fact, I skipped the first day of my 10th year of high school, which was my first day of high school, because I was afraid and I just wanted to get high. Then my second, I mean, that year in my 10th grade, I skipped like 65 days of school. There's only like
Wow.
180 in the whole year.
Yeah.
Then in my first week of my junior year in high school, I was stuck in detentions for a whole week to make up for all the detentions I missed in my previous year
Wow.
before they would give me my schedule. And then they tried to do that again with me in my 12th year. And I pretty much, after the first day of that stuff, I had this horrible attitude. I went down to the office, I put my hand out and I said, give me my schedule or I walk. I am not putting up with this bullshit. They gave me my schedule and I went to classes, but I finagled a way to get on the work study program. So I was out of that school by 12 o'clock every day. And I went to
Okay.
work. I was working at it, as a cashier at Geisler's or whatever. And yeah, and then I was just getting high, being with boys. I wasn't okay if I didn't have a boyfriend. I had very low self esteem. I was a very angry teenager, but I started drinking in bars when I was 16. I was shooting darts and drinking shots, and I could hold my booze, and I could tell dirty jokes for 2 hours if I had somebody to also tell them with me, back and forth. You know how that goes. And
Yeah.
I never wore shoes. I used to put cigarettes out with my bare feet, and that's the kind of guy. See, they called me Mo. I was just one of the guys. I really was. I didn't know at all who I was.
Yeah.
And people nowadays would say, "What? Are you kidding?" So, anyways, fast forward, I moved 13 times between the ages of 17 and 25. And I
Wow.
finally took a geographical cure and I moved to, when I was 22, I moved to Texas. I lived in San Antonio for 2 years and just totally,
Where did you
I,
grow up? Where
I
were those
grew,
younger years?
I grew up in Windsor, Connecticut.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And then I mostly my partying days, as soon as I left home were in Manchester and East Hartford and stuff. And now I live in Windsor Locks. But for
Okay.
those 4 years I lived in Texas, it was absolute. In the first 2 years, I developed all the chaos that I had developed right here in Connecticut from 21 to 23. And then for another year, I lived in Austin, and everything just went downhill from there. It was a very, very difficult time in my life, and I hit my bottom. I kept running from who I was, and I kept running towards who I knew I had potential to be. And then I finally reached out and got the help I needed. And that was in February 3rd, 1985. And so it's been over 37 years now that I haven't had a drink or a drug. And for that, I am truly grateful. And that's with a lot of help and a higher power too. So I base my life now on gratitude and learning more about myself and giving away everything that I have. That's why I want my message to get out there. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I coach and train, because I am a very happy person and I want to help other people, because it's not a tough world to live in. There's a lot of people who are suffering and it's just needless. They don't need to be doing it. We can reprogram that shit that our parents, no matter what we grew up with, we can reprogram it. And that's what I help
Yeah.
people do. Does that help you a little? I mean, then
Oh,
of course,
absolutely.
then there was like a
Absolutely.
30-year corporate career in there in sobriety.
Well, that's what I was gonna at first I was just gonna comment that it's amazing how much all of us in one form or another, different to different degrees, different circumstances, have to reprogram ourselves from the way that we grew up. Again, different circumstances, all our paths don't look the same, but it's amazing how much we need to reprogram ourselves, and it happens at different points. We wake up in our 20s, our 30s, or 40s.
Indeed.
So it's just amazing how our we know that's the case, our formative childhood years set the stage, but it's just amazing in this particular series, especially just seeing how much our childhoods have shaped who we have been or who we were, but we changed. But my next question was going to be, okay, after you got the help that you needed, what how did you go from one extreme to the other where
Oh
you
my
needed that
gosh.
kind of
Yeah.
help and then you end up in a corporate career for 30 years?
Right. I had to change everything about myself. But what you just said, I just want to comment on it. It's like everybody has a story, John, right? Every one of us has gone through some forms of trauma here and
Yes.
there. No one gets away unscathed. We all are human and we make mistakes and we have to deal with the consequences of those mistakes. So, some of us learn faster than others, right? I've seen even now people in their 50s who they've been married 3, 4 times and they keep attracting the same type of person and they're refuse to look back on their childhood. Right. So you say, well, this series, it's amazing how we deal with that's because the people that you attract, John, have worked on their stuff,
Yeah.
have looked at the past and seen what their patterns are, and that's a huge testament to you, to really get these stories out here. But hopefully it inspires others to look at that, to do that kind of work, because it is important work that we have to do.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
hope so. I mean, I've learned since the pandemic the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, I was looking for ways to keep busy, joined the board for the American Marketing Association Connecticut chapter. And it was all about storytelling. And to start, it was kind of like, okay, I know more or less marketing is storytelling, but combining the constant as like the communications manager for the organization, between the constant reminder that it's about storytelling, what I was putting out there for people on social media, but between that and people what they would share in forums like this during the pandemic when your back was against the wall, you didn't know how long this was going to go for. People were questioning if they were happy in their life and their work. There's the great resignation. I've learned how much we really all do have a story, no matter what it may be,
Hmm.
and b how bad we are by default at telling it. So C, we have to really pick up the pieces and not pick up the pieces that you're broken, but really learn our own story and share that, because I think so much of what troubles us now is that many of us don't know our own stories. So sometimes we cling to the stories of others, but we need to appreciate where we've come from. And again, it's going to look completely different. It may be a prized childhood where everything seemingly went perfect, or one that didn't, but everybody has a story to tell and everybody has the right to show that uniqueness.
Hmm. All right. So to get back to answer your
Sure,
question,
sure, sure.
what happened for me was I reached out and got the help I needed. I started going to 12-step program every day for years. I stopped hanging around with the people that I was hanging around with. I actually quit the job within a couple of months of getting sober. I quit the job that I had been in because I just needed to work on me and needed to work on me, obviously, work at a job, but I needed something less stressful. I was a manager in a wholesale picture frame supply company, and
Okay.
didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was 24. Everybody was older than me. They're all married. I'm the only white one. I mean, it was really, just I didn't know what I was doing. So, anyways, I
Yeah.
quit that, got another job, and I started really working on myself. I did go to therapy, like a group therapy, and I learned so much. So I started diving deep. Not only did I just look at what I was thinking, I started feeling. So I had to feel years of pent up and stuffed emotions. I cried. I can't believe how many tears that could actually be in a body. I
Yeah.
really dealt with my trauma. I dealt with the dark stuff that nobody really wants to deal with. I worked the steps, and then I moved back to Connecticut as about a year and a half sober, and I met my husband. And so we were both just about 3 years sober, or a year and a half when we met, and about 3 years sober when we got married. And now we've been married for 34 years. We did have a daughter, and she now has given us 4 grandchildren. And over the years, we just continued to work on ourselves separately. We didn't
Hmm.
just pour all of our stuff into each other. We One of the things we learned in relationships is don't take each other's inventory. So if he was really pissing me off,
Hmm. Yeah.
I knew
Yeah.
I had to work on me, because those triggers that
Yeah.
other people, that when we say other people make us mad, it's not really true.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
can make you mad, or nobody, those are just triggers. You have that stuff in you. I had this stuff in me, and so I learned to work on it. I learned to look at it and work on it. And then as soon as I finally allowed myself to feel all the feelings and work through all that stuff, work throughing means talking about it, writing about it, sleeping on it, constantly letting it go, forgiveness work. And then suddenly those a-holes don't show up in your life anymore. Like
Mm.
it's true. You
Yeah.
don't, or they're there, but they don't bug you. It's like, well, that's their stuff. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
easier. Yeah. And then in
Yeah,
my,
when you get to that clarity, it's mostly, yeah, because you're not at perfect peace with yourself, but you're working in that direction.
yeah.
You know,
Well,
it's like how much do you tolerate kind of thing.
I do think too that it's easy when you learn to change your beliefs. And so some of the powerful beliefs that I was able to change were things like, I can't even remember the old one, but like, the victim mentality thoughts got changed to, wow, this is happening. Well, since I know, because
Mm.
this is my new belief, since I know that everything happens for my highest good, I know that some good is going to come out of this. And when you believe that, then it doesn't matter what you're going through. It's
So
like,
where
oh,
did you learn that everything that happens
it's for my
come
highest
is
good.
from my highest good? Where did that seed get planted in your mind? When?
Okay. So that was in my late 20s, my early 30s, when I read A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles. Have you heard of it?
No, no, no.
A Course in Miracles is a book written by actually a Jewish militant atheist who had a transformation and began to have an entity, a divine channeling occur. And this book is divinely written. Just pick up and read a couple pages of it, and you'll be like, oh, yeah, there's no human that probably wrote this book. It
Hmm.
is divinely written. And it taught me a lot about how to deal with life on life's terms. That terminology comes from AA, but the little things, like I'm usually not upset for the reason that I think. That's from A Course in Miracles. That other belief, everything happens for my highest good. That's from A Course in Miracles. There is a workbook for students that's 365 lessons in for the one every day of the year.
Hmm.
And it's and there's also a manual for teachers, and then there's also a workbook, like it's that the text itself. And it's hard to read. You can only read like a page at a time, but I've actually read it about 6 times over the past 35 years. So it's part of my life now. It's part of how I think. It's part of what I teach, and it makes life so much easier. I do not live in hell. I was there. I know what it's like to go through it. But now I can create heaven on earth, or I can create hell. It's how I think. It's
Yeah.
how I think.
So can you tell me a little bit about your career? Um, you said you had moved back to Connecticut. Where were you in work, and what led from that point to this point?
So I started working at the Hartford Courant and as a temporary job. And one of the things they had me do was looking through help wanted ads in the paper. So,
Yeah.
or, and whatever, I was doing some sort of work with that. And I got to read all the help wanted ads. And I saw that the Hartford was having a job fair. So I went down there and I got the job. And I started at $17,000 a year, and that was a $3,000 increase from what I had back then.
Wow.
I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Yeah.
And and in that same week, that was when I met my husband. So everything like changed
All
in
the
my life.
stars aligned.
Yeah, it was really amazing. So yeah, I lived. I worked at the Hartford for 27 years. Yep, 27 years. And I started there when I was 26, and I had 13 different job assignments. Some of them were
Wow.
planned and some of them were reorgs, but nevertheless, probably about more than that, I'd say 25 or something bosses, because I have counted them. And I just, because I love the study of human behavior, I started studying Myers-Briggs type indicator and the Enneagram and then everything disc. And I really started looking at the bosses and the leadership that I've had over the years. And I've had a lot of really good leaders. And I became a trainer when I was in my 40s. The company paid for me to go back to school. I had about 1 year under my belt at that time. I went to University of St. Joseph, which was St. Joseph College back
Yep.
then.
Yep.
And I graduated in 2005 with a bachelor's in psychology. And then I went on to get my master's in education from the University of, or Capella University, and online class. And it just is amazing how much I was able to apply at work. So my career was just fantastic all those years. Finally, I decided I wasn't getting any higher into the leadership realm, and it was time for me to leave. So I started my own company called Emerge Leadership Academy. And it happened in actually in 2013, I left the Hartford, but I started a life coaching business because I needed a break. I
Mhm.
needed a break from corporate. So I took like 2 years off, and I said, they need me. I got to get back into that game. And I started training, and I
That
was
says a
training.
lot that for you, a break was going from a job, whatever job it may be, to tackling people, tackling their lives.
Yeah.
That was a break for you. That just
Oh yeah,
shows
that
like
was a break.
what corporate was for you. That's a break.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Well, because of all the work, 30 years of work I did
Yeah,
on myself, I finally could apply it and give it away. Now, I had been giving it away for years and in the community for free, but I thought, oh, maybe now I can make some money doing it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Maureen, so does it make sense, although your childhood triggered a lot of a path of kind of um where you were kind of lost for a couple of years, to say the least. Is there anything that stands out from your childhood? I always try to tie where somebody is now to where they were then. Is there anything from your childhood that shows you like, yes, it makes sense that I'm here today doing this work?
Well, my family has been an incredible support for me. So I was not raised in a dysfunctional. My father was an alcoholic, but he was a very mild-mannered drunk. There's not a lot of things that happened, but there was a turning point. And at 11 years old, I was actually just yeah, I was 11 years old, just a couple months shy of turning 12. Our house burnt down in the middle of the night. I was babysitting next door, and it was a huge transition for my family. Everybody was displaced, and all other people's houses, 6 kids, 8 people. It was a lot, right? It's a
Yeah.
lot on my parents, and it was a lot for everyone. And I do remember sort of like, oh, before the fire, everything was nice and happy and perfect. And after the fire, my whole world turned, upside down. It was very, very different, but it could have also been my age, right? So, anyways, there was that. And then, but I would also say that my mom, she went back to school in her 40s, and she got her undergraduate degree in psychology. She was a nurse, always was a nurse, and we've been best friends like all my adult life. Best
Yeah.
friends. I'm sure, and I don't know how many of your listeners believe in other lives, but I'm sure we've been together for many, many lifetimes. But I've always had my mom as like my best friend, besides my husband and all the support group that I've created over the years. And she got her master's in education as well. And so I had this role model, right? And I just knew I wanted to help people. We're different personality types, but we have the same values. So personality is everything. We have beliefs, we have values,
Hmm.
we have experiences, we have culture, and we have, ideas and skills and all of that. So it goes into the big bucket, but I think that's why I had awesome role models.
And Maureen, before we jump into your book, I guess I want to ask, how do you define leadership? What does it mean to you?
To me, leadership means helping people to find the best in themselves so that they can reach not only their goals, but any business goals that we might all be working for together. So it's helping people to reach inside to do the hard work that needs to be done so that everybody can reach their goals.
Love that. Thank you. And then at this point, we can jump into the book if you want. Just
Sure.
please introduce the book and tell us a little bit about it.
Great. Here's the picture.
Nice, nice cover. Covers everything. That's what's going to jump out. It sounds like common sense, but I mean, there are book covers that move me, and then there are some that are like, that's a very nice one, Maureen.
It's purple and blue. What is not to like?
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I like it.
So it's called Emerge: 7 Steps to Transformation, no matter what life throws at you. So remember, I said I got my master's in education, and that was in 2008. And in 2013, I left the Hartford and struck out on my own. And I had a little business called Spirit Drops. And I knew as an educator that I really wanted to put together. So, all these years, I've been studying all these self help books, doing all this work on myself, and mentoring people and sponsoring people in the 12-step program. So,
Hmm.
as I continued to watch and learn and see people change their lives over and over and over again, I took like what I found was all the best tools to use, and I put it into a book, into an 8-step process. That first 2 years where I did the life coaching, I was creating that class, the course, the modules, and all of that stuff, the steps, if you will. And
Hmm.
it turned out to be 7 steps to transformation, because there's so many people that are suffering in the world. And once you start to awaken, like you talked about earlier, when you said, some people just don't even know they have choices. Well, when
Yeah.
you hit bottom, and as an addict, you are in so much pain, you can't stand anymore. You get help, and then you get tools, or you go to therapy, or you find something, right, to help you. A lot of people go through life without hitting that deep sense of pain. So
Mhm.
they put up with long-term discomfort, and they don't even realize they're doing it. But then when they do wake up, when they do realize, like, something will happen. So usually in midlife, right? Something will happen where a spouse leaves or cheats, or the kids now empty nest and I'm not a mother anymore, or I realize the kids are gone, my job sucks, what am I doing here? I've
Mhm.
always been serving my family, now I all I have is this job and it's not fulfilling. Those are the kinds of things, right, that wake us up. But people don't have the tools like people in recovery do. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. Oh,
So I
yeah.
said,
Absolutely.
I'm going to write this book for people who need like a program of recovery, or figuring out who they are and reinventing themselves, stepping up into the next greatest version. So I did. That's what I did. I put together these 7 steps that, with all the best of what I've learned from all the awesome authors I've read over the years, the programs I've taken, Course in Miracles, 12 Steps, Conversations with God, and a lot of different spiritual programs, right, that I've done. So that's what I did. I put it together, and I don't know, do you want me to share with you like what the steps were, or what else do you want to know about the book?
No, I was gonna say that's profound that it's about setting up this structure for people. Like, I love the how you said that recovering addicts or addicts have their programs that help them kind of take those steps with support to get to what that goal is, whatever recovery they're on the path for. And we don't. You know what I mean? I've talked about it in this podcast before, where we're taught so many things in school, most of them which we never use, but that's not for this podcast. But the one thing that we're not taught is how to live.
Oh, right.
We're not taught with the word that I've fought with, and I came up in a previous episode here was coping skills.
Yeah,
Where
exactly.
but the way that I look at it is, it shouldn't be coping. And coping to me paints a picture of trying to survive something that has
Yep.
hit me randomly. But for me, it's like you got to learn to live with it, because a lot of coping nowadays or often is surviving. It's not really turning into it. It's not really addressing it. It's kind of like trying to get away from it. And I
Yeah.
mean, it all depends on whose definition you're using, but we were never taught how to cope. I think that's why there's various origins for why people, our population, may have mental health challenges. But aside from that, we're living in such a world that we were never taught how to survive, how to
Oh,
live.
we
Like,
were. We were taught. We were
yeah,
taught to use drugs, alcohol, sexting, internet,
yeah.
gambling, shopping. Oh, let's not forget eating. And, those are all ways to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the negative ways
I
that we
guess I
cope.
meant I meant like non-vice
No,
methods.
no, we weren't
But I
taught that.
get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
But
Um,
you've heard, I think it was the Dalai Lama who said, if we taught every 5-year-old in this world to meditate, within 10 years, the world would be a completely changed place.
I agree. I agree. And when you mentioned the book, the like the that divine book, what was the title of it, Maureen? I'm sorry, the one that you mentioned before,
A Course in Miracles?
A Course in Miracles. You said that there was one book that was written for children, right, or for kids. Didn't you say that there was a version of that written, or a course or a workshop for children? Or did I
No.
mishear you?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's true, but there's another one called Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh. Have you heard of that series?
I
He's
have.
written a children's book for
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of any of these tools for children, just so that
Yeah.
they're not going to avoid all the problems of the world. They're still going to have pain in their life, but maybe they can navigate them more efficiently than we did, whatever
Yeah.
our own paths may be. So I'm a big fan of anything that's kind of meant for adults, but can be translated for children to understand and learn about. So I appreciate just hearing about any kind of resources that are like that. But yeah, if you could go into
Well,
just
better
what,
parenting, number one.
that's a completely different episode as well. Yeah.
I
I
know.
mean,
But the other thing is, so much of us, usually it starts in our 20s when we become more conscious that of the choices that we make and the consequences, and we have to fall down and hurt and all that stuff.
mhm,
And
mhm.
we're away from our parents. Now we're on our own.
Yeah.
That's when you can do your best work. That's when, so this is why one of the things that comes up in business all the time is this issue with the older generations complaining about the younger generations. I have no tolerance for that. None. I have
Mm,
no tolerance for that. Because I don't care what generation you're from, everybody needs mentoring in their 20s and their 30s, right? Like,
mhm.
I'm still getting mentoring and I'm in my 60s now, John, right? So we're always growing. You can't just expect, well, they expect so much, the generalizations, those are beliefs that we can get rid of. Everybody needs help. If we could have open-hearted, sort of that servant-based leadership where if you're going to get things done, then let's care about your people
Yeah.
that are actually doing it.
And I think that's what's missing is that servant leadership of any kind, where we're still stuck in this idea that it's a zero-sum game. Um, and yeah, that argument about different generations and how they look at things differently. It's like each decade, if you go back, each decade is just so much different than its predecessor.
I know.
especially when you talk about social media picking up in the last
Technology.
15 years. And every year is just exponentially growing, where it just, I mean, the mental health issues that I had during the course of the pandemic stemmed a lot from just, what is my role as a dad now versus my dad's role? But they're two separate worlds. Like they look
Yeah.
completely different, like the 80s versus, the 2000s. So,
But what's not different, John, is the way we feel.
yeah,
It's not different. And the
yeah,
tools that we have, they're not different. They're not. They're not different. The personalities are different, and the way we cope might be a little bit different. Some of the tools that we have to, grow might be different. Escape might be different. But
hmm,
honest to God, we as humans are not that different. We're
true,
not.
true.
So
I get that
that's my little
pitch.
pet peeve.
Um,
Is that we're really not that different if we could just meet in the middle, meet where we
oh,
do connect,
absolutely.
and then we can find all kinds of
Now you're
solutions.
saying you're saying we're not that different from, yeah, like previous generations, or in general,
Oh yeah.
different from each other now.
That's right. Like, in other words, I love working with people in their 20s because they're like little sponges. They soak
Mhm.
everything up. And I also love working for people in their 30s because they have all kinds of experience now, and they're also like they want to get make it. So it all matters. What really all matters is the willingness
Yeah,
and that
absolutely.
little bit of enlightenment to be like, okay, I do want to change. I am willing to grow. I am open minded to listen to what somebody else has to share with me.
Yeah, as long as somebody's open, curious enough, no matter their age, they can pretty much be a blank slate, because they'll see things through your lens, through your perspective, and the stories that you're sharing. As long as somebody's just open to listening, it's amazing what we can pick up just by walking in each other's shoes, hearing each other's stories. So I'm in agreement on that. So I guess at this point, yeah, if you could just give us, Maureen, the structure of the book and how it is you walk the reader through the 7 steps,
Okay.
that'd be great.
So I start off with my story because I didn't want the book to be about my story. That's more like in the introduction.
Mhm.
And then I get into talking about the different steps that I've seen that really work in people's lives. And then I follow that up with examples of clients that I've worked with that have made changes in that step, and some personal experiences as well. And then finally, with an exercise or two or three. So there's assignment number one, assignment number two. Some cases I give 3 assignments, but mostly it's like 1 or 2 things that you can start to work on right away.
Mhm.
And the way I designed the book was to first, this is nobody really likes this part. Hold on. because of what we were talking about before, but the first thing you have to do is you have to look at the past.
Hmm.
You can't just be trying to change your future or your now. You have to go back.
I mean,
So
you
I
you have to
say,
check the foundation before you
yeah,
build anything on top of it.
totally.
Yeah,
You have to
yeah.
deal with the crap, with the unresolved trauma, with the unresolved issues, with owning who you are. So I say, first, let's look at your personality and your belief system. Okay. So in my book, we do an inventory of your parents. We do an inventory of how did they influence you? What unspoken messages did you get from mom about love,
Hmm.
about money, about men, about your body? What unspoken messages did you get about, life, or, all of those things, sex? There's actually, like, I'm going to guess, I haven't actually counted them, but say 15 different topics. So you do a deep dive into that, and you learn so much about, like, oh, you get aha moments when you're sharing this now with your coach or your whoever, somebody that you trust. Um, and those insights will come to you, and they'll say, oh, I it's either the insight is, I reject this, right, from my parents. I am not that way. I have rejected it a long time ago. I am this way, right? That's what we do. Or we unconsciously just take it on, and
Hmm.
we wear that. Oh, my mother always told me I'm not good with money. So I just believe now that I'm not good with money, as an example.
Maureen, how often have you come across reservations or hesitation to open up that closet of skeletons?
In my clients,
Yeah.
very rarely, actually.
Okay.
By the time people come to me, they want help. They're ready to do the work. But there are people who say, I don't need all that. Just
Mhm.
help me find another job. And I say, you know what? It's not just about updating your resume and practicing a behavioral interview anymore.
Yeah, because I mean, if you take all that, for lack of a better word, if you take all that history and baggage with you, it doesn't matter where you are, it's going to catch up with
No,
you.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
The same patterns are going to occur over and over until you're willing to work on them, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so there's beliefs. And then we talk about how to rewrite your beliefs. So I took this whole book, by the way, and put it into an online program. It's called Recovery at Work, because at the time, I sort of thought I would going to be working with people who were in recovery like 5 years or so, and they were upscaling now to bring recovery into their job, and not just, yeah. So anyways, but I got to tell you, even though I did that in the pandemic in 2020, I will tell you that probably 80% of my clients are not in recovery. They're just in the world. Okay, so that's beliefs. So we work on those. And then we work on the other dreaded topic, forgiveness. When you have emotional blocks, it's because you're holding on to negativity about something that somebody probably did to you. We have resentments that we hold on to. We have trauma that we hold on to because we've been hurt and we've been betrayed. And you know what? That's part of the human experience.
Mhm.
It's not, it didn't only happen to you, it happens to everybody, because we have expectations. We have expectations of other people, and then they fail us. And it will happen because of that. So helps you to take full responsibility for you having the expectation. Once you can let go of that and realize the benefit or whatever the gift was that you needed to have from that experience, and some of them are horrible.
Yeah.
Some people that I've worked with were raised in absolutely horrible, disgusting circumstances with child abuse and sexual abuse and all kinds of really horrific things, and they've turned out okay.
Mhm.
Like, they people are amazingly resilient when they want to be. When you let go of that toxic energy that
Mhm.
will hold you back. So that's step 2, forgiveness. Step 3 is learning, now that you've let go of that stuff, that you are a spiritual being inhabiting a body on this planet, and that everything in our lives, including our thoughts, our physicality, all of nature, it has a vibrational energy,
Mm.
and that vibrational energy field will um, will rise to meet however high you want to go. Right? There's a lot of books that talk about this. I talk a lot about John David Hawkins' book, Power versus Force,
Okay.
talks about this, or Abraham Hicks talks about this. And so there's a lot of energy that we have in our own body that we can manage. And the higher energy levels that you allow yourself to feel, then the more on that level you're going to attract to you. So if you want the big highfalutin job, you have to step into that identity, be that person, feel what it would feel like to be there. And some of that involves visualization work
Mhm.
and thought transformation. So when you feel the negative stuff coming back, you're like, oh no, I forgave that. I'm not going to
Yeah.
dwell on it. So it's a lot of talking to yourself and feeling the higher level energy vibrations. Ready for number 4?
Yes, ma'am.
So once you learn a little bit the steps on how to manage your energy, then And only then can you begin to really use your vision and define a strategy and a plan of action. Okay, so now that you know, what is it that you want to create?
Mhm.
You are a co-creator in the universe. And this is how the universe works. You are responsible for your beliefs. What you put your focus on expands. How you manage your energy and maintain that higher level energy vibrations, who you want to hang around with in your life. Have you heard a lot of people talk about that? We're the average of the 5 people we hang around
Yes.
with most.
Yep.
And those levels of energy are going to dictate a lot about what you're going to be able to create in your life. And so, as you get into visualizing and strategizing, part of the big thing that we want to figure out is exactly the how. And that's not always your job. There's a certain amount of surrender that's
Mm.
involved when you create a vision and you have a strategy and you have a plan of action. And actually, step 7 is taking action. But even as you're taking action, you're still surrendering to the outcome. You're
Mhm.
still looking for other ways that your manifestation might show up.
Yeah.
It doesn't always come in the way that you think it will. So you have to be open for the signs. Yeah. All right. The 5th step is aligning with your values and really using your personality and your values to get your head and your heart in alignment. Because, you know, any adversity that we experience is usually because our heart is not aligned with our head. Our heart might say, oh, but I really want to do this. And our head says, no, but you have to do what
Yeah.
your duty says you have to do. And so if you can get your head to listen to your heart and vice versa, you
Yeah.
can, and that's about values work, right? And if you can really get in alignment with your values, then you don't have any problem saying, like, I put self-care first. And yes, I'm a person of integrity and I don't make commitments. And that's why it's that I can't follow through on.
Mhm.
And that's why it's easier for me to say no, but it's very, very hard for people to say no. It's not that
Mhm.
easy for me to say no either, I'll be honest.
Okay.
And then plan 6 is planning for obstacles, right? Because life is going to throw you curveballs. Pandemics happen, people get sick, people die, cars break down, shit happens. What are you going to do when it hits the fan?
Mhm.
You know, you have to make self-care number 1. You have to plan for obstacles. But what do you think is the biggest obstacle, John, in life? And in whatever goals you're working towards your goal, what's your biggest obstacle?
Oh, me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's you. So it's like,
Yeah.
so it's all of us. It's our brain. It's our ego voice. It's that inner critic that says, you're not enough. You can't do this. You're an
Mm.
imposter. You don't know what the hell you're doing. And that is, unfortunately, really is our biggest issue. Now we're ready to blame the government or who's the president right now or
Yeah.
my significant other or my kids or my sick mother or my blah blah blah, and it's or my boss, right? It's nobody's responsibility but yours how you deal with stuff. Those obstacles are going to happen. Are you going to let them win? So that's the inner leadership work. That's the inner disciplinary leadership work. You keep going, you keep
Yeah.
going. Then the final step, John, is action. You know, now you have a plan, you have all the tools you need. You just have to take baby steps every day. You cannot give up. You got to just keep going until you don't want to anymore. Until your heart and your head say, no, this is not good for, whatever. Then you make adjustments along the way. But in the beginning, nobody said to me, Maureen, you have to stay sober for 37 years. You have to stay sober for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
They said one day at a time. And so that's all we have to do is one day at a time, one obstacle at a time, one relationship at a time. But that's what happens. We get overwhelmed when we're looking at the future and all the steps we have to take, or all the
Yeah.
classes we have to take, or all the interviews we have to go. Just do the next best thing.
Yeah, what stands out, especially in the last step that you gave, was the incremental part.
Mhm.
Because if we cave if we think that there's so much that we have to get to, the 37 years. Um, we cave as we start because we're always looking ahead, or we don't get started
Right.
because we all want, this is like the era of instantaneous gratification, so we want the results right away. Instead of getting on the bike or running, on the track for 2 minutes today, 3 minutes tomorrow, 4 minutes tomorrow, we're going to try to run a half hour, bike a half hour today, and if our first time, and if it
I
doesn't
know.
work,
I
it
know.
doesn't work, we give up. But it's that incremental. I love that, extra 1%, that extra 2%. And then on top of that, was what was great that you added on top of that was, if you ever get to a point where your heart's not in it, or your mind, then it's okay to just walk away, because again,
Oh,
it
yeah.
comes back to self-care. And I think so many people burn out because they're trying to make whatever they said they were going to commit to, even to themselves, even if they mentioned it to no one else. If I don't see this through to the end, it means I'm a quitter.
I
Quitter has
know.
such a bad connotation to it. For me, it's only if you're like egregious about it, right? You're not learning your lessons. But if your heart and your head are not in it, then it's better for you and for everybody else if you step back, reassess, maybe go back in. If not, you're on to the next thing. But again, it's with consideration that you may be taking up other people's times, but at the same time, balancing it with your need.
Yeah, it is a funny balance because a lot of times you don't change or let go right away at the first signs. But all of this work, when you do all the steps, when you are doing this deep work, you're not just like, okay, step 4 is done, right? You're
Yeah.
designing a practice. You're meditating every day, you're writing, you're being more conscious of your thoughts, you're recognizing when you have to, oh, I have to do some forgiveness work on this.
Hmm.
These are not sequential and then you're
Yes.
done. It's maintenance, it's a
Yeah.
practice. That's like leadership. Leadership is a
Hmm.
practice.
It's
Yeah,
not just a checklist. It's a checklist you start off with so that you hit all the parts, but that you repeat so they become behaviors and habits. It's an outline.
exactly.
It's an
You're
outline.
right. Yeah, and it's habits. But it's the educator, because I'm an educator. That's the way of getting the message across. Well, if I tell you it's these 7 steps, they're simple. They're not
Yeah.
easy, but they're simple.
Yeah.
They're not easy, but that inner work is not easy, but boy, is it rewarding. It's so rewarding when you realize, "Oh, wow, that just happened and I didn't get tweaked. I'm fine. I don't, I can
It,
respond now instead of react to
yeah.
crap.
Yeah.
I'm good." Yeah,
It really is a matter of, have finding it yourself, or having somebody point it out to you, that you just have to pause what you're doing, step back, look at it, diagnose, and then figure out which process you want to go with. We'll say emerge, right? And working on yourself. Again, I go back to it, just people try to put their nose to the grindstone and just kind of battle through whatever they have coming at them. Well, very rare. We're not good at assessing how we're doing. We're quick to judgment, maybe because we don't feel good, but we're not good at, okay, why don't I feel good, and breaking that down. So I love the fact that you're saying, listen, even if you get through to the final step, all these other steps, they're gonna be fluid. You're not locked in. You can go back and reassess.
that's right. And stuff comes up, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I did an inventory at 25 and another one at 35 and another one at
Yeah.
40 and another one at 50.
Yeah.
It's like
I mean,
it doesn't stop.
it's like with this series, we talk about books, and it's like I read a book years ago that I read again for this series, and the way that I looked at it, what I learned from it, what I took away from it, was completely different than when I
That's
was
so cool.
10 years ago.
Yeah, because 'cause you've matured and you've had all these other experiences, and now suddenly you're like, "This isn't even the same book."
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what it feels. Yeah, exactly. That's what it
Yeah.
feels like. So, Maureen, I'm curious, in writing the book, how did it change you? What lessons did you take away from writing the book? Some authors have answered about the writing process, some have reflected on how their material has changed. What lessons did you take away from this book, writing it out, getting it out there?
It was a long process, John. It wasn't easy for me to write that book. I'm kind of scattered, and I didn't think I had a book in me. And then I graduated with my master's, and I'm like, maybe I do, because I had done
Yeah.
all this writing, and I graduated with distinction in writing and all that stuff. And so I thought, I started blogging, and then I started writing every single day, 750 words, like The Artist's Way.
Hmm.
That book, are
Hmm.
you from?
Hmm.
And I did that
Yeah.
every day for like 1,000 days. It was like 3 years or something. And I realized, yeah, I can absolutely put all these thoughts in an organized manner. And then I got a publisher who really helped me a lot. So that process was huge, because it was me using all of my skills and tools to reach a goal that only a very small percent of the population actually attain. And
Yeah.
that was a really good booster for me. And now it was also like, this is my VIP program that you can get for $20. I
Hmm.
mean, this is and now I charge $3,000 for my 8 week module program, but I also give coaching in between. And that's, but it has all the steps. It's here, it's out there. And I've just taken a lot of other people's ideas and my own experience and put it all together. So it feels like, number one, it was a huge accomplishment,
Hmm.
and number two, that it's an easy way for people to get at and understand how to get themselves to the next level. So that was good. But it's like anything. It's like getting a new car. It wears off after a while. I'm not like riding
Yeah.
high on the coattails of my authorship. No, I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, in that same vein, then, and I know, you're proud of this book as well, but in that same vein, in that same idea, what do you think is next for your writing? Do you have an idea of what you would want to tackle in your next outing as an author?
I don't know. I
Which that's
don't.
a completely fair response as well.
I think, if I do write something else, it will be about it will be about self-care, and it will include putting myself first in vacations and parenting and grandparenting. But it's about living that next stage of life, the sage, how to be a really good sage and an elder,
Hmm.
to help younger people living in the world, but also putting yourself first.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, so I'm
Yeah.
not sure that's like germinating in the back of my mind, but I think it's also probably 3 or 4 years from now away.
Okay.
It's a more of a long-term goal.
No, that makes sense. Putting yourself first by sharing your knowledge. I mean, it, yeah, it makes sense to me in terms of I was talking to somebody recently about asking for help. And I think actually it was the podcast I just put out recently, asking for others for help. And we had said, if you ask the right person, they'll benefit from that help as well. They'll benefit from what they share. They'll benefit from the experience that they're sharing with you, their skills, whatever it may be. People benefit from them. It's an advantage, it's a benefit for them to speak what they've taken away from the world. So that makes complete sense that it's self-care, but most of it is sharing for that next generation of yourself.
I really like the fact of, this is an exercise that I've done multiple times. Have you ever, right? Have you ever, John, done an exercise where you go into a meditation and you get yourself into a deep state of relaxation, and then imagine your future self 20 years from now coming into the room? What are they wearing? What do they look
Mm,
like? What messages do they have to share with you? And John, this makes me want to cry. I am that person that I used to do that with 30 and 20 and 30 years ago. I'm
yeah.
the person now that I met way back when. And I just, it's hard to, it's very humbling. It's very humbling, because I I feel not that I've arrived. I
Hmm.
still have stuff to learn, but I have seen some amazing transformations from my clients and the people that I work with, that have moved me so much, because
Yeah.
they're so open and willing, and the healing that I've seen is just amazing, and I get to facilitate that, and
Yeah.
you do too as a coach. You've seen
Yeah.
it, right? When people come to you and you see their transformation, it's nothing
It was
short of
insane.
a
It's
miracle.
crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Like, I just had that conversation with one of my clients where we've been working together for like a year and a half. He has a hectic schedule, so we don't meet as often as I'd like, but just the difference in personality from when I met him to now is amazing. And he says as much and he thanks me for it. And it's just by opening up, but just by talking. But the best part about your story is you're finally that person that's working in that direction, right? Because you say you're not perfect, you haven't reached that goal. I don't think any of us really wants to admit that or
Well,
say
we're
that,
human.
but we're working in the right directions. We're doing the best that we can. And it's amazing that you are now who you pictured then.
Yeah.
And then you didn't know what the steps were. No one said, okay, these are
No,
the
right.
exact steps you're going to take to get there. It was like trial and error, circumstance, being proactive, being open hearted, being a servant. So there was what's amazing is that you got to what you saw, but no one told you this is the way to go. You had to figure it out yourself, and it worked out.
Well, and to help others means you have to work through a lot of fears,
Mm,
right? And so we do. That's what we do. And we have to keep shining the light. I know it's kind of a trite saying nowadays, but there's a lot of darkness in the world. And we need more light workers and people that are willing to look at their shadow self and help others, reflect that to others, that it's okay. It's okay to be human. Don't stuff that and
yes.
compartmentalize that away.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's your survivor, and they helped you a lot of times, and so
Hmm.
now there's they can still help you, but just don't let them take over in your head.
Absolutely, because I can
Yeah.
imagine that even your experiences that you had from your teenage years into your 20s when you found help, that those lessons still apply to everything you want to achieve, that you wouldn't be able to move forward. If somebody came in and said, "Okay, we're gonna wipe your memory free of your recovery and anything before," you just wouldn't be the same person
Oh,
because
no.
you have that recall of
That's
what the
right.
circumstances were like, what being in shit actually felt like. And
Yeah.
it wants to, your body wants to protect you from feeling like that again. So it
You
all
know,
serves a purpose. As shitty as it may be, it all serves a purpose.
one of the promises in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is, "We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it,"
Mm,
because everything we experience can benefit others.
yeah.
Eh, yeah, very true.
So, Maureen, just in starting to wrap up, first, so how would you summarize this to somebody, regardless of their industry, regardless of their experience? How would you summarize this book to convince them to pick it up to learn its lessons? What would you say to them?
Well, I normally just describe my book as it's a self-help book. If you're looking to get to the next level or the next best version of who you ever thought you could be, then do this work. And here's the steps. And they're not hard. It just takes time, and you have to dig a little bit deep and do some insight and introspection,
Hmm.
but you will come out stronger and into the next best. You will have a transformation. You can have a self transformation, right? Whether you work with somebody or not, but don't give up. Like, you got to keep going. You got to do them all and then create a lifestyle. Those habits that you
Hmm.
said, create those better habits for yourself, that self-discipline, because if you have that, you have happiness, you have everything. All your needs will be met if you continue to do your personal growth and contribute.
And
Contribution and
I
personal
mean, look
growth.
for somebody that's going to keep you accountable as well.
Oh, well, obviously, that's why
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
world is
yeah,
not a better place.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
When you have somebody, a support system, and somebody to hold you accountable, you will do the work.
yeah. And then, is there anything else you want to share, Maureen? Anything about what you're up to these days? Anything you have coming up in the next couple weeks or months that you want to share with people here?
Well, I would love it if you're listeners and watchers wanted to come to my website and take the quiz, it's what animal best represents your leadership style? And it will
Mhm.
give you a little bit of a breakdown of your personality at work. And then if you want to dive deeper, you'll have some information on how to do that with me. But it's really fun. And it's the first step to really get to know yourself better is to understand. So that's at emergeleadershipacademy.com.
Yeah, I like that exercise because again, it's all a matter of stepping outside of yourself. So if you're able to pinpoint which animal more or less mirrors your behavior and type, you can see yourself from outside yourself. It gives you a great vantage point. So I'll definitely take that test.
Well, it's just a funny way to kind of say there's 4 specific animals that you're one of that I've made up, and it responds to the everything disc
Okay.
personality type profile. But it's not the full assessment. It's just like
Yeah.
7
Yeah.
questions or something. And that will, just full disclosure, get you on my mailing list. You can always unsubscribe, but I do send out a newsletter each week with tips and tactics for leaders, how to better manage your life and how to grow into the person you really want to be.
Awesome. Maureen, thank you so much for sitting down for this conversation.
Thank you very much for having me. It was very enjoyable. Thanks, John.
Absolutely. Anytime. And Maureen's book again, Emerge 7 Steps to Transformation, within the parentheses, no matter what life throws at you. I really appreciate that, Maureen. And if there's anything that I might have missed, because, we're short on time, even though we've gone over an hour, if there's anything that I might have missed that I should have asked, that you feel I should have asked, please reach out, let me know, and I'll reach out to Maureen with that same question. Um, in the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Subscribe where you're watching, subscribe where you're listening. Reach out if you have any questions to me in general. And I'll talk to you in the next episode. Take care.